I definitely want Brian Daboll back next year. I don't think Brian Daboll is an elite offensive coordinator. That's, I think, under no pretenses should that be assumed. However, Brian Daboll has taken basically none of the credit for Josh Allen's development, but yet gets all of the blame for anything that goes wrong, which I think is very interesting.
Right.
In addition, I think that people forget what the offensive talent was like on this team last year. And during the 2018 Buffalo Bills season, there was a brief moment before Josh Allen came back from injury and decided to go YOLO Josh on us and just throw the ball down the field to Robert Foster and run for 100 yards a game. There was a time when the Bills were on track to be the worst offensive unit in the history of football. That was a legitimate chance. And when you look at the names that were on that depth chart in 2018, it's pretty clear to see why. Those receivers aren't on a roster anymore in the NFL. Jeremy Curley is not employed. Kelvin Benjamin is not employed. Andre Holmes is not employed. Our starting three receivers, absent Zay Jones, who is still employed by the Raiders, but really not that much employed. So aside from those things and Zay Jones, no one else is even on a roster. So what you're saying is your starting players that you equipped around an NFL rookie quarterback were not good enough to have a job on 31 other franchises. In addition, his offensive line was one of the worst in football. It was, talent-wise, one of the worst offenses I've ever seen in my entire life.
Me too.
And statistically, at the end of the year, it was, it wasn't the worst in the world. It was below average, fairly bad, I'd say. This year, we put a ton of effort into our offense, and that's great. But people are underestimating how bad we were to start with, and because of that, they're overestimating where we are now. You cannot say simultaneously, man, this offense, we need a true number one receiver, we need additional running back, we need some help on the offensive line. Man, if we got another tight end, that would be really great. You cannot say that and then simultaneously in the same breath think that Brian Daboll is the problem on the offense. Because if Brian Daboll is the problem on the offense, that means he's got the tools he needs and he's the one holding them back. You can't have it both ways. And so Brian Daboll has more to work with this year than he did last year, and the offense is better than it was last year. But we went from terrible to, okay, we have actual tools to work with. We didn't go from terrible to amazing. That's not what happened. The fact that we had to put so much effort in free agency just to get our offense off the mat indicates how bad we were last year. We put a ton of effort into it, but that effort wasn't there to get us from good to great. It wasn't there to get us from great to stellar. It was there to get us from abhorrent to passable. And that's what we got. We got from abhorrent to passable. And I anticipate if we put another investment in the offense through the draft and through free agency and maybe through a trade if available and things like that, that we have the opportunity with another year of growth from Josh Allen to go from passable to solid next year. And I think a lot of offensive coordinator critiques are really results-based. It's based on if the offenses did well that drive, then we're okay. And if the offense didn't do well that drive, well, it's got to be the coordinator. And some of that is something you and I have talked about before, and that's we don't really want to blame Josh Allen. When Josh Allen does something bad, we want to blame somebody else. And the easiest person to blame, and someone that, because Buffalo offensive have been so bad over the last 20 years, the easiest person to blame, the easiest scapegoat is the offense coordinator. Now, to the question about Houston, there's legitimate criticism for Brian Daboll for the Houston game. Devin Singletary getting 13 carries in that game. I know he got 19 touches, 7 targets is great, but he should be getting a lot more than 13 carries against a really bad rush defense.
None in overtime.
None in overtime. Brian Daboll called the overtime period like he was running a 2-minute drill. It's like he panicked and thought we got to get this quick. And when you go to overtime, that's not the case. Especially when you've got the ball and next score wins, you don't That's not when you panic. The clock doesn't matter. It's overtime. There's no chance of you tying. So at that point, you need to do whatever's effective, not whatever's fastest. And I think that there is legitimate criticism for Brian Daboll for doing that. And I think he should take the criticism for it. But just because you have something to criticize him for doesn't mean you should fire him. We got things to criticize Josh Allen for. Should we cut him? We got things to criticize Deion Dawkins for. Should we cut him? There's things to criticize Sean McDermott for. Should we fire him? Hey, you know what? Brandon Beane swung and missed on Kelvin Benjamin. Should we fire him? I'm not saying that he's without fault. He absolutely is. There's mistakes he's made. We just went out on him, and I think that's fairly notable a mistake. But we're focusing in on things like that, and then when someone says, okay, what else? We're saying global general terms like his offense lacks creativity. Oh, did we have a wide receiver throw 2 touchdown passes this year, both in big games? Is that what you mean by lacking creativity? Oh, well, he's predictable. Okay, what do you mean by that? Well, I don't know. The criticisms are weird and vague because we have specific criticisms, but when we accept those and go, okay, yeah, I accept those. He's not perfect. He has flaws and he showed them, but I need you to show me more than that in order to fire him. Then all of a sudden people get a little bit weird with their responses and just want to use things like, well, results. And then you point out the talent. And the digger you deep into fire Daboll, the messier and more vague it gets. And I'm just not willing to accept that messiness and that vagueness on one side of the equation, while the other side of the equation contains things like continuity for your rookie quarterback and continuity for your second-year quarterback, and now continuity for your third-year quarterback. Big year for Josh Allen coming up. He's got to take the next step so he can show people he's the guy. You really think that continuity isn't going to help Josh Allen with the things that Josh Allen's bad at, but a new coordinator will? Will a new coordinator fix Josh Allen's ills? That just makes me wonder how well you're evaluating Josh Allen. And so Brian Daboll has his flaws. He should be criticized for those things, just like any player should be criticized for the mistakes that they make. That doesn't mean I want to fire the guy.